This is Political Radar Pulse with Rhonda Sitnikow, where we explore the issues facing Northeast Wisconsin and beyond with insightful interviews and open discussions.
Hey, all you political junkies, welcome to Political Radar Pulse, the best 30 minutes of unscripted and uncensored political talk you will hear all day. I am going to bring up a topic today and have an episode regarding something that I really do believe is not commonly discussed, and a lot of people are not informed about, including myself. And I'm so grateful to have Dawn Spang here with me to do that. She's the Aftercare Director for iHeartWorld. Tell us what that is.
Well, first of all, iHeartWorld is a nonprofit organization dedicated to fighting human trafficking, more specifically sex trafficking, in the Brown County area. Our headquarters are here in Brown County, and a lot of the work we do is in Brown County. Although we do work with law enforcement to expand out to the other area counties to help them when they need assistance. So my role as Aftercare Director is I have kind of a twofold role. I work with our outreach team, which is a team of volunteer therapists, counselors, and social workers that work directly with law enforcement to assist them when they pull a victim out of a trafficking situation. So their day jobs, they have proper training and everything else in trauma care and counseling, and then they volunteer their time with us to work with law enforcement. So when a young girl is pulled out of the life, we will go in and meet with them right at the police station to talk with them about resources and how to get them out of the world of sex trafficking.
Okay, so we're going to expand a little bit more about what you're doing, but let's start with, I guess, maybe identifying who these victims are. Like, what does the atypical, is there, some sort of look to that person, demographic? Is there something in their life? Who are the average victims of human sex trafficking?
The average victims, there's a wide range. More commonly, it is females. There are some male victims that are involved in this life, but most of them are females. Our outreach team was created in November of 2015. So we've been working with law enforcement since that time. And the majority of the women that we are seeing are ages 18 to 24. And a lot of them are from this area, Brown County, or Wisconsin itself. Not a lot of them are from foreign countries or from out of the state. Most of them are from this area. A lot of them come from what people in the social services field would call dysfunctional families. So there's abuse in the families, there's alcoholism, mental illness, that sort of thing. Oftentimes they have a history of running away. So they're an at-risk population that a lot of people in social services see. They oftentimes have had connection with different resources in the area, and they just haven't been able to be successful in getting help and getting out of the life.
So were you, this was created in 2015. What was the reason? Was there just a whole bunch of awareness that just happened? Wow, this is a real problem in our area. We need to do something. And what do we do about it?
Yeah. iHeartWorld was actually created in 2009, but they moved headquarters here in August 2015 because the founders have family located here, and they started hearing about how sex trafficking was an issue in this area and how there weren't any resources to deal with it. So our founders, Brian and Susan Russo, moved the headquarters here. I started working with them shortly after that, and the outreach team was created at that time. So it's been in existence for quite a long time, but they moved here because there was no resources in the area to help girls stuck in sex trafficking.
So this sounds like it's a secondary problem from possibly addiction, poverty, other issues in a community that are happening.
There's something that makes a victim vulnerable to being caught up in this world. The traffickers themselves, what lay people would term as a pimp, we use the term traffickers. They are master manipulators. They are master observers at figuring out what someone's vulnerability is and then preying upon that vulnerability. Human
So
trafficking.
I have to stop you and ask you this. That's so creepy. So are these people, these traffickers, pimps, are they out there in cafes, restaurants, farmers markets? Are they literally looking for people to, to get sucked into this?
There is that real-time presence of traffickers looking for girls to pull into that life in our area. Absolutely. But a lot of it starts on social media. So it's not that real time. It's starting that social media presence and reaching out to girls who are posting hashtags about fighting with parents or, that sort of thing. Hashtagging different things makes it very easy to search and makes it very easy to recognize what that young girl's vulnerability is.
So, okay, let's go through that. I have a daughter who's 11, so this hits very close to me because, there's years that they start to be very, they're not very happy with you for various reasons, just it's natural. And now they have that outlet, right? They have the social media outlet to do these things. And so some of the hashtags that you're seeing are that like they're mad with their parents.
I hate my parents, grounded again, different things. Because when our young people are posting these hashtags on social media, that can negate all the privacy settings that you've set for them.
Wow, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
that
hashtags can negate privacy settings that parents set on the phone or iPod?
On that social media app. Yep.
On the oh wow.
And most recently, Snapchat has come out with a location finder. So you can search on Snapchat people who are close to you. So then you can snap those people who are close to you, even if you're not friends.
So this is what these traffickers are doing. I mean, this must be a part-time job for them looking through.
This is their job.
This is their job.
This is their job. They can make up to $1 million a year tax-free off these young girls that they are trafficking.
Okay, so you've made a point before we started. I was talking about what it's called human trafficking, sex trafficking. I wasn't sure, how that was working in the proper term. But then you made a point about with drug trafficking. Tell what you said.
So drug trafficking, obviously you're trafficking drugs. You're selling drugs. Drugs can only be sold once. A lot of big cities, a lot of the gangs in those big cities are moving away from drug trafficking and picking up human trafficking because human trafficking is more profitable. Drugs can be sold once. Humans can be sold 10 to 15 times in one night. So it's much more profitable for traffickers or gangs to deal in human trafficking because the product is always there. The other thing is it's low risk. For traffickers, it's low risk to traffic in human beings because when their court case comes to file, say they get charged, when their court case comes to court, there's no evidence in the locker to present. Because these girls are coming from dysfunctional families and oftentimes are runaways and hard to track, there's nobody there to testify against them. So it's very low risk for these traffickers as well.
And what is because again, this is not a world that I'm familiar with at all, as are many people watching and listening. What is it? How does this actually go down? How does this interaction, exchange, transaction, however you want to call it, how does it happen? And what is the price of this? How do they make all this money? Well,
first of all, it's important to think of human trafficking as modern day slavery because that's what it is. It's modern day slavery. And there's a couple different ways that it happens. The most popular way that a lot of people may have heard about is Backpages, which is an internet site that ads will be posted on that site. And a number or email will be posted and you respond to that. It's like a new language when you're emailing or texting back and forth, because they want to make sure they're not going to get caught. And so they talk.
There's code for what they're trying to do.
All sorts of code. We went to a training a couple of years ago and we got a 7-page document full of abbreviations and code words used to talk about how this transaction occurs. So they will text back and forth. Sometimes they'll talk via phone, and they'll set up a place to meet. They will set up a price, and they will set up whatever service is going to be provided. Sometimes this is done directly through the trafficker, and he is in charge of texting back and forth. Sometimes the girl is in charge of doing that, or the victim.
So the people, spending money for
purchasing,
these,
yep, the perpetrators.
So that's according to the federal law. Anyone under age 18 induced into commercial sex is a victim of human trafficking, regardless of whether the trafficker uses force, fraud, or coercion. So
correct.
This person is breaking the law. Mm-hmm. I know there was a significant amount of people in this area not that long ago that were arrested for that. Mm-hmm. How do you, this is happening. How does what you do and law enforcement, what are some things you look at to try to get the ball rolling to start, finding these people? Mm-hmm. What do you do?
Police will do sting operations where they will respond or post ads to be able to either respond to the ads to try and get the girls, or they'll post ads to try and get the Johns. The difficulty in stopping the transaction from occurring is at this time when someone is purchasing sex from an adult. So you have a man who's purchasing sex from a woman who is 21, and police intercede in that transaction. The only thing that happens to the man attempting to purchase the sex is a municipal ticket. So
of
similar
what?
to
like how much?
Similar to a speeding ticket. It's quite a bit. I believe the first one, for the women, it's like $1,200 because the women also get a ticket. The men, I want to say it's a couple $100. But essentially, they're written a ticket and they go on their merry way. That's it. Most recently, when the last sting that we did with police, they worked on getting state charges on all of those. They call them Johns or perpetrators, which means that they were all booked into the jail, fingerprinted, pictures taken of, and they had to spend a certain amount of time in the jail before they
and that was my next question, and something we were discussing this online on a thread, and wondering about what can local and state governments do to help this issue, to be part of this. Is there legislation that the state has that can?
There is new legislation that was introduced or that was passed last year that's been put into effect this year to assist with minors. But in terms of the men who are purchasing the sex, there's not a whole lot of laws set in place. It'd be great to get rid of those municipal tickets and to make it,
but we arrest
statewide.
We have strict laws when it comes to drugs, right?
It's just one of those things that we haven't quite caught up to it.
I wonder what it's going to take, though. I mean, like, is this like something that's actually in play? Is it happening to try to do that?
There is a new bill that I believe was introduced by Representative Andre Jacques to increase the fines for the men who are purchasing the sex to, I believe, around $5,000, and to not make it a municipal ticket. So that has been introduced. But I don't think they've even debated that issue yet. I think it was just very recently introduced. And so there's something in process, but I think a huge thing to note, especially for this area, is our law enforcement. Our law enforcement in this community wants to get rid of this. They do not want it as an issue in our county, and they work endlessly to stop it. Brown County Sheriff's Department recently designated one position, the sergeant. All he does is human trafficking.
I was just going to ask you, how many people are actually allocated to do that?
This is what he does full time. He has other people that work with him that do it a little bit more sporadically, but he is dedicated to that full time. And they do sting operations to get Johns, to get girls, and to get traffickers. That is not normal across the country. We work with different organizations across the country who will never do a sting operation because they're afraid what perpetrator is going to show up. Is it going to be a congressperson? Is it going to be a lawyer? Is it going to be a well-known doctor? So in other communities,
you're answering my questions before I ask them. So what does this person look like that wants to pay for sex? And that's a whole nother debate I've had with other people about why is it wrong? It's like, well, because I think it's everything you just mentioned under all of this pretense. What does a person look like? Who are these people?
International statistics say that the white American male is the largest purchaser of sex in the world.
Not shocking.
But in our community, we've seen all ages, all races, all occupations, there is no one person that
so it's not, Joe Schmo that is middle class, works at a bank. It's everything.
It can be Joe Schmo, absolutely. When the sting operations are run, the busiest time is right before dinner, before husbands go home to their wives. The second busiest time is 8, 9 o'clock when kids are in bed and husbands leave to go out with the guys. That's your busiest time.
Okay. Wow. I'm not shocked by this, but I am.
Mm-hmm.
And
our law enforcement is amazing to even run those operations when in other areas of the country it isn't done. We've had this question asked of us numerous times. How do you have a relationship with law enforcement where they invite you in and where they even do these sting operations? And we just say, we don't know. The law enforcement in our community is amazing, and they don't want this issue in our county.
Well, and you also have to think about it, and this is what I think about every time I see on the news or hear about the sting. How stupid do you have to be to do this when you know that there are people setting you up? You can't be surprised when you're caught, and they continue to do it. I think a lot of us have seen on television, they actually filmed the stings on there was a cable news show that did that. But there's always that chance. Mm-hmm. And do they randomly do the sting so that people aren't expecting it? Is it, a few times a year? How do they decide? Is it resource driven? Do we have resources so now we can do this sting?
I don't know what decides that for law enforcement. All I know is I get the call saying, can you have a team ready?
How often does that happen?
Couple times a year. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And is there an average amount that you come up with every time?
But there's also that, I got a call last Friday. Hey, can you meet me at the sheriff's department? I have a girl. She was a victim of human trafficking. Can you come in and talk with her? So I get those calls at 10 o'clock in the morning. We get them at 2 o'clock at night. It's kind of random,
So let's go to the girls or the victims of this. What does it look like? You find these people, and what does that look like? Talk about that.
It really depends how long they've been in that life. If they've been in that life for a period of years, what you're seeing is so hard because their medical status is very poor. Their physical health is extremely poor.
So they're not being taken care of at all.
Nope. If you look at statistics, they said that back in the 1800s, when there was slavery in the South. The average cost to have a slave per year was $40,000 in modern day money. Today, that cost is $90. These girls are not given basic clothing, food, sometimes water, not any sort of basic medical care. We met with a young lady recently who spent a week and a half in the hospital because her body had deteriorated so much from being in that life.
And how does that work for these girls? Because they can't be enjoying themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Are they, in order to stay there, are these traffickers, are they giving them, are they chemically altered? Are they giving them drugs? Are they keep them there, to keep them doing it?
Yeah, there's different tactics that traffickers will use. They will use sometimes the relationship tactic. Oh, I love you. Oh, we need you to do this to support us. We need you to do this to be able to support our dream, to be together and have a family and everything else. And then there's other traffickers who will use guerrilla tactics, such as alcohol or drug use, violence, threatening family members or their children if they have children, or themselves. So they use whatever tactic it takes to keep that girl in that vulnerable situation. Remember, I said earlier, they're master manipulators. And so they know and can figure out what it's going to take to keep that girl where they want her.
And so now you have this girl, and she's with you, and she's going to go through some therapy and obviously some health care has to happen. What do you do to make sure she doesn't return back?
Well, that's the difficult part. A lot of here in Brown County, our community is very well versed in domestic violence and what a domestic violence victim is like and what a domestic violence victim goes through and that cycle of violence. And unfortunately, a victim of trafficking has a very similar story. A survivor of trafficking, once they leave the life, it's not the only time they leave. The first time they leave is never the only time. It can take an average, similar to domestic violence, an average of 7 times to leave the life. Because when they're in that life, they believe that whatever needs they have will be taken care of. Even though they're not, they've been led to believe that through force, fraud, coercion, being forced to use drugs to continue working. Oftentimes, if a trafficker has forced them to use drugs of some sort to be able to keep working, she thinks, well, I can't leave this life. How am I going to pay for my drugs? And by then her body has built a physical dependence. So she needs that drug. So then it's an endless cycle for her being stuck in that as well.
So I want to ask you about a few things just in our community that were mentioned, and you can, say there's truth to that or not. There's apparently there are nail salons out there that there are traffickers who are running these, and they're getting these girls fake licenses through the state or somehow to practice that job if they do work on the side. Is that something you've heard? I'd heard that is something is happening as well.
I have not
in this area.
I have not heard of that specifically happening in this community from what I do, but that would not surprise me.
And then there was, I'm just going through the list.
No, that's fine.
The GV truck stop is apparently kind of a hot spot for that. So truckers coming through town. And
it's not the business itself. It is the parking lot.
Right.
And the last statistic I heard about that particular place was it was the 3rd busiest spot in the state of Wisconsin for human trafficking to occur.
Oh, so there's a lot of truth to that. Okay. Wow. And then I recently, I just interrupt you.
Yeah,
go right ahead.
A sidebar is recently we work a lot with Department of Criminal Investigation, and they came out with information that FBI rated Milwaukee as a national hub for human trafficking throughout the United States. because it's centrally located. It has major airports. It has major highways. So the FBI has noted it as a national hub for human trafficking throughout the U.S.
So infrastructure can literally provide a wonderful. Wow.
If you
that's
compare,
crazy.
if you compare the map of all the major highways throughout the U.S., and then you look at hot spots of where human trafficking calls are occurring, the hot spots are where the major highways are.
Yeah, well, I suppose access, right?
Yeah.
We can get them there for you. And there's probably a lot of places that they can meet that are nondescript or isn't out in the open. Okay, so there was recently the city of Green Bay has a strip club, and do we call it a strip club now? I don't know. Gentlemen's club. I've always thought that was a really interesting way to say that. Because everything that I've learned, that doesn't really jive with gentlemen. But so strip club, women that go and take their clothes off, men pay them. They pay to get in. Sometimes they just pay for drinks, whatever. It's a business. And there was a situation where there was a new owner of the strip club. They were going to exchange the liquor license. And there was a debate about that because there was a new owner. And people were able to get up and speak from the public and talk about it. And then there was one woman who got up and started talking about she was concerned about sex trafficking in the city, and that this is something that doesn't, in her words, this didn't help the problem. And this is another thing, again, that I'm not aware of, but I want to know. Like, we have these businesses, and I think that might be the only one that we have in the city of Green Bay at this time. Is this something is that also something that's part of the problem? I mean, is this a hub as well?
Okay. I can't speak to that particular business in general. What I can tell you is traffickers will use stripping, exotic dancing, whatever you want to call it, as a way to groom the girls that they would like to work for them as a natural expansion of her boundaries. So she may start with dancing for him, and he may say, wow, you're really good at that. This would be a great way to earn some extra money. And so he may get her a job at a strip club. And once she's comfortable with that and feels proud of the money she is able to bring in for the family or for the two of them, he may then say, we could make some extra money if you did this. And it's just a natural expanding of those boundaries. So I can't speak to that particular business, but I know that oftentimes goes along with making the girls that the trafficker wants to work for him comfortable slowly.
And you've learned this information because you've been speaking to these victims. And that's how you know this.
Right.
So this isn't something that's just out, you're throwing it out there as a possibility. This does happen. It's a fact.
Yep.
And so again, we're not saying this business is doing that, but this happens at businesses like that. So you would have to wonder about that. And as a community, if we're really and truly trying to do what we can to combat this problem, because I think I read it was like something, there's significant numbers of people that are involved in this in the state of Wisconsin and in Brown County. We need to do what we can, and maybe.
So what we're doing as an organization, we will be opening a home that it will be the first of its kind in the state of Wisconsin for adult women survivors of human trafficking, and it will be open here in our community. Obviously, we can't release the location for confidentiality and safety, but it will be the first in the state of Wisconsin. Right now, when we work with survivors and they want to be placed in a long-term recovery, rehabilitative type home, we have to look outside of the state of Wisconsin to be able to get them the help that they need.
Now that's so fascinating, because when you say that Milwaukee is, such a grand hub for this, and there's nothing like this happening.
Not a long-term recovery home.
Oh.
Nope. The nearest one that we've used has been Chicago. And so we are opening, it's going to be called the Rose Home, and it will be for women ages 18 to 24. It will have trauma-informed counseling. It will have life skill development, teaching them how to cook, how to clean, how to balance a checkbook, how to budget, and then also education and workforce preparation. So if they need to get GEDs or develop a career path, that will be a part of it as well. It'll be about a year-long program, just depending on how girls respond and what their needs are. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more. But there are minor homes, so homes for minors in the state of Wisconsin. There's 2 that specifically are for sex trafficking survivors, but there isn't anything for those over
the victims
age 18.
do go down in age, I'm sure, on occasion.
Yep. We were just at an event, and one of the DCI agents we talked to said prior to that day, the youngest victim that he had worked with was 14. He got a call that day, and that changed, in the youngest victim he worked with was age 12.
And that's horrible. And I'm wondering about the social media and the fact that, kids that age, they now have that. They're out there, and their parents are clueless, and they're not watching what their kids are doing. And as you say, the parental privacy can be removed from hashtags. That was worth knowing to hear that right out of your mouth. That's crazy. Anything else you want to say, Ad? We're not running out of time, but is there anything else you want to?
Well, I think a lot of people, when you talk about social media and parents being aware and everything else, a lot of parents say, "Well, I don't want to invade their privacy."
Oh, I absolutely. I'm all up in that privacy.
I don't want to do that. But you know what? As a parent, it's your right to be aware of who your child is texting, who is messaging your child. There are all sorts of things on Facebook where, hey, do you know this person suggested friends? And traffickers can just put in random names and see who comes up. And if privacy settings aren't, very specific and very shut down, you can totally see everything about a young girl's life just from looking at pictures, and they can find a way into what that girl's vulnerability might be. So be in your kid's business.
Yes.
I mean, my kids hate it when I say that, because I have 3 children as well, a 17-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old daughter, as well as a 14-year-old son. And they hate that I'm up in their business. But as a parent,
that's your job.
Our job to keep them safe.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Great information. Really gave myself an education, and I know people that are going to watch and listen to this. I'm so grateful for what you're doing in the community and with iHeart World, and I'm looking forward to. Actually, I'd love to talk to you again at some point. It's an issue that I believe needs a lot bigger microphone. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
So that wraps up Political Radar Pulse episode 16. For show notes, go to politicalradarpulse.com/16. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell to get notifications. If you'd like to support the show, you can like the show on Facebook and Twitter, and you can buy shirts and other merchandise at politicalradar.com/shop. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for watching Political Radar Pulse. To ensure that you'll never miss an episode, subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. To check out more episodes of Political Radar Pulse, visit politicalradarpulse.com or connect with us on Facebook or Twitter.